Hey, good morning, guys. Here we go. We are on chapter 6, Measure of a Man. Sorry I missed yesterday. I know it's a lot to catch up on, and you might not have even had a chance to watch any of them recently, but I still want to encourage you to try and take time and just listen when you can. And let's just see where it goes, see what you might hear, what's something that you might be able to pick up, if not for this moment, for another time. So, getting wisdom is, always a good thing. So we just continue to try and read and try to grow. All right. Making God's truth attractive. All right, respectable. 1 Timothy 3 and 2. Cosmetics of the Gospel. When my family and I moved to Dallas, we built a home in the White Rock section of Dallas, which posed a problem because we built our house on rock. We had terrible time putting in a lawn. I remember one day in Austin when when it was about 105 degrees, I was perspiring profusely while I picked up rocks and trying to prepare a lot of topsoil. Barbie, an 8-year-old neighbor, had been watching me for several days. As she stood there, sucking on her lollipop, she made the comment I'll never forget. Mommy said, "You work awfully hard for a preacher." I've laughed about this little girl's comment many times, but I am grateful. You see, I knew I had impressed her parents and perhaps changed their views of preachers. This was an important step in becoming a witness for Christ. As some neighbors enjoyed saying, they didn't see me as a typical man of the cloth. The Greek word kosmios, the New Testament word kosmios, is variously translated in 1 Timothy 3 and 2 as being of good behavior, well behaved, or respectable. In essence, it's speaking of a man who is living a well-ordered life. Our English word, cosmetics, comes from the same word. We see this connection when the verb kosmio is translated to adorn. For example, when Paul wrote to Titus, he urged slaves to be subject to their own masters in everything, 2 and 9. They were to be well-pleasing, not argumentative, verse 9. And they were not to steal from their masters, see verse 10. Rather, they were to adorn, kosmio, the doctrine of God, our Savior, in every respect, verse 10. In essence, their lives were to be like cosmetics to the gospel. Cosmetics, of course, are designed to make us attractive, to look and smell good. In other words, when non-Christians see respectability in our lives, hopefully they'll be attracted to the gospel message and to Jesus Christ. A modern parable. A certain man and his wife, in a particular city, bought a home and moved in. This man was a Christian minister, and the man from whom he purchased the house was also a Christian minister. For a few short days, it became apparent that some neighbors were disturbed that another minister had moved next door. For behold, the former minister had paid little attention to the outward appearance of his property. He allowed the grass to grow long, and when he did mow, certain sections were left uncut. And where he mowed, mounds of dry grass accumulated. Dandelions were rampant, and other assorted weeds became a permanent part of the landscape. This man had planted no trees or shrubs, but allowed his large, spacious lawn to become a hayfield. Dang. It just happens that certain neighbors in this particular community paid special attention to the outward appearances of their homes. True, many were not Christians, and they were materialistic. For some, their houses and their lawns appeared to be their gods. Regardless of their own motives, these neighbors were totally turned off by this minister's irresponsibility, lack of orderliness, and unwillingness to do his part to add to the natural beauty of the neighborhood. Consequently, the minister moving in after the former one found great communication barriers with his non-Christian neighbors. They were utterly convinced that Christians, ministers particularly, are a bad lot, irresponsible about keeping up their property, and unconcerned about how this neglect affects their neighbors. The Apostle Paul would identify this man as one who is not respectable. The interpretation. The parable is true. I was the man who brought this property from a minister and faced the communication barriers because of this man's reputation in the community. It took my wife and me many months to build trust with our neighbors. The way we accomplished it, however, was simple, yet it wasn't easy, because we had to prioritize our budget and do a lot of hard work. What we needed to do first was apparent. We moved regularly and sprayed the lawn to kill the weeds. Mowed regularly and sprayed the lawn to kill the weeds. Rather than fix up the inside of the house, we postponed that project and allocated money to buy shrubs and trees. And because of our limited budget, we dug holes in ourselves and planted everything. It was a huge task, but we got the job done. Would you believe that when the neighbors, particularly those who resented us the most, saw our efforts, they warmed up and became relatively good friends? I'm thankful for this experience because it taught me a great lesson. If, as Christians, we choose to live in a particular neighborhood, we're also responsible to keep up our property so that we can be a good testimony to those who live there. This is part of being respectable, walking worthy of our calling. A respectable man is a man who lives in such a way so that his total life adorns the teachings of the Bible. Whether it is his dress, his speech, his appearance of his home, his office, or the way he does business. All are to be in harmony with biblical principles and doctrines, because God is a God of order. A man of God should also be orderly and proper. He should be a Christian gentleman in every area of his life. When I think of being a man who lives a respectable life, I think of what Paul wrote to the Ephesian Christians about our Christian walk. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. Paul followed this general exhortation with the following specific exhortations. So this I say and affirm together with the Lord, that you walk no longer just as the Gentiles also walk, in the futility of their mind. Verse 17. Therefore, be intimidators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, just as Christ also loved you and gave himself up for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God, a fragrant aroma. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. For you are formerly darkness. You were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Verses 7 and 8. Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, walking the most of your time, because the days are evil. Verses 15 and 16. Point of action. The following project is designed to help you develop the quality of being respectable. Ask probing questions. Use the following questions to evaluate your lifestyle openly and honestly before God. What about your external appearance? Does it measure up to what is considered proper, both biblically and culturally? Remember, it is important to keep these two in balance, usually, but not always. Culture itself makes certain demands on people. Non-Christians also have certain expectations regarding what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. As Christians, we must take into consideration cultural expectations and, at the same time, not violate biblical principle teachings. All right, my external appearance. I've been told I dress like a tactical tree and a lumberjack on a job interview. So, I imagine that's a very casual and rustic look, kind of look thing going. But I always try to show up orderly, clean, shaved, and my hair, it's like a rough cut. So I don't know how it's interpreted, how it looks. I think I do have a very casual look to myself. But I try to show up proper, clean, and orderly. I just noticed that as I got older, my mindset got away from the appearance of giving my best, like my best not necessarily being a suit. Even though it is important that we know how to dress and get cleaned up, I still do that when necessary. But I find myself not really seeing the significance of being dressed up all the time or in a suit all the time. But maybe that's something for me to think about and look at. Like, maybe it would be better. I've considered it, like maybe it would be better for me to go to work in a suit to see the appearance. But I've always found that the casual appearance that I have is something that is appealing to people. It's never seemed off-putting or caused any distance, which sometimes happens when people hear chaplain or preacher or something like that. Let me see. Next one. What are my motives regarding what I wear? Am I attracting attention to myself or to the Lord Jesus Christ who lives within me. Remember, you can dress elaborately to attract attention to yourself, or you can be shabby, unkempt, or unclean to attract attention to yourself. Both have lead to a lack of respectability. So yeah, like I don't know if my appearance seems shabby or unkempt, but I know my desire is to not make my appearance about me, but to make my appearance as casual and approachable. Like I don't want to have an appearance that comes across as like the heights of fashion or overly stylish, where somebody who doesn't have would feel like either envious or uncomfortable or whatever. I just want to be in position to just be simplistic, even though I like dressing up and I always enjoyed dressing up and looking good. I do know that it was something that I was doing for my own ego, and you can start to see that in certain times where I was younger. When I would dress up, it was like I know I look good, and my mindset reflected that of, oh, I know I look good, and I know that's not necessarily always a good place to be. So yeah, that's something I have kind of strayed away from as I got older. What about the house I live in? Did I buy it to impress people, or did I buy it to glorify Christ Jesus? Remember, the question is all of all of these questions has to be handled individually. Do not judge others. Examine your own heart. Size, cost, and location are not the most important issues. Um, your motives are. I know my motivation for the house was more to do with the significance of the location, being that it was close to the elementary, middle, and high school. And my thought has always been, if we're able to be here so the boys can have stability, it would be the answer to something that I promised myself. In stating like the offer of stability for you all as family after spending 4 years where we were in two different locations. My desire was for the stability. The house wasn't big, but it was a decent size, And my thought is like, well, when it's time for you all to graduate, then we would be free to move to a different place, a bigger place, without disrupting your lifestyle or your home. But I loved and always enjoyed doing stuff like um, mowing the lawn. I I liked when had an issue and like I was able to take out the bushes, or the trees have rot, so I was able to cut the trees down, and all those things. I enjoyed that I was able to do that because it was our house. Changing out the sinks and switching out stuff in the toilets, that felt good because it was like, okay, I was doing something to benefit. Changing out the disposal, or cleaning out the washer, dryer vents, and also being able to help the neighbors do certain stuff. um, it always felt good, like this is what you're supposed to do, and this is what makes sense for the benefit of the people around. So the house has always just felt like this is a space to do those kind things and be present to where you guys can live a stable and free situation without my motives uh, getting in the way, because I would have tried to go active before, or would have tried to, I don't know, do something that would require some more travel. So, yeah. What about your speech? Do I use words to build up others or to build up myself? Do I glorify God with my words, or do I glorify myself? Furthermore, is my speech becoming to a Christian? Does it adorn the doctrine of God? I remember in like high school, there was a time where I started to curse, and it never really sat right with me. And I realized how it's one of those things that I was doing more to impress people around me than was it true to what I felt. So, like in my speech, I try to take time to reflect before I just start running my mouth. Like, I don't want to say things. I don't like cursing. I don't even like hearing it in casual conversation. Like I hear other people who do curse and who their speech changes when they're upset and stuff. And I don't want to seem like I'm a different person in one situation versus another. So I'm striving, and I've always been striving to make sure that that's not the case. But yeah, I I I try my best to let who I am be who I am, regardless of where I am, and let that be that. But I hope to be encouraging and positive in my speech, and even in situations when I get upset, I try to check myself so that like I don't let myself get ruled by my emotions and drawn into speaking and acting in a way that's unloving. Because if I can try to hold on to love, then I can at best speak lovingly, and at worst I can be quiet enough to not say something that could possibly offend or hurt or anything like that. So I don't know if that's the best approach or the good approach, but it's approach to me that gives me space to not cause harm as I seek to grow and be a better Christian and believer and follower of Christ. And all of these questions, like take time, pause, and just put a message in, give any thoughts or something, you know? Listen to yourself. Reflect on the following illustrations to see what you can learn about it. On one occasion, we were constructing a new building for one of the churches where I served as founder pastor. One of the men on our executive team was a general contractor, and he volunteered to oversee the construction. We also hired another man from the church to do the on-site supervision. One day, the man who oversaw the day-to-day operations came to me expressing deep concern. The general contractor, the man on our executive committee, was using expensive expletives on the job site and were not becoming to any Christian man, let alone one who was in a leadership position in the church. As the senior pastor, I felt responsible to confront the issue. It was difficult and painful experience for me because the man chose to resign from his leadership role in the church. And what made the experience even more difficult was this man was also my friend. Two different personalities. Since that experience, I've discovered other businessmen who publicly claim to be Christians and yet live this kind of dichotomous life. They never use this kind of language around their families or close friends, but once they enter their business environment, they become different personalities. Somehow, they justify their language as being necessary to win respect. Sadly, they lose it. A mark of insecurity. Frankly, I have concluded that many men use bad language because they're insecure. This becomes their way of covering up their feelings of inferiority. This became particularly obvious to me one day when I was sitting in a graduate school classroom taking a course in statistics. The professor went to great lengths to scribble extensive and complicated formulas on the chalkboard. The man sitting beside me happened to be rather proficient in statistics. In fact, he was working on his second PhD degree and had shared with me privately that some of the formulas the professor was using weren't accurate. This day, the student couldn't contain himself no longer. He graciously but directly questioned the professor's accuracy. I'll never forget the verbal explosion that followed. In the twinkling of an eye, the professor's language changed. His expletives were shocking, even to a class filled with people who didn't claim to be Christian. As I reflected on what unfolded that day, it became apparent to my friend that my friend had threatened the professor in the worst way. Rather than admitting his error, he tried to cover up his insecurity with bad language. Unfortunately, some Christian men do the same. Yeah. Intense anger. Anger can also cause a man to use bad language. Talk to any professional football player about what happened on the field when tempers flare. Body language and anger go hand in hand frequently. However, insecurity and anger run on the same track, which leads to double trouble. Insecurity often causes anger, which can cause a verbal explosion that is anything but edifying. Check yourself. Use the following scriptural exhortations as a checklist to determine the degree of respectability you have with both Christians and non-Christians. Check those areas where you believe you are particularly strong and mark those areas where you need to improve. Let's see. Your business life. But we urge you, brethren, to excel still more and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business and work with your own hands, just as we commanded you, so that you will behave properly towards outsiders and not be in any need. 1 Thessalonians 4:10-12. Whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord, rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of inheritance. It is the Lord whom you serve. Colossians 3:23-24. Those who have believers as their masters must not be disrespectful to them because they are brethren, but must serve them all the more, because those who partake of the benefit of our believers and beloved. 1 Timothy 6:2. Let me go back. two different personalities. I try to keep myself in situations where if people from different groups of my life were to come together, there wouldn't be any incongruence. Like you can see that you're dealing with the same individual. Like if someone from work was to experience my friends that I grew up with, like a social setting, they might see, oh wow, he's more, Kyle's more extroverted or something like that around his friends, but they wouldn't see me as a different individual, if that makes sense. Like they would see me as the same person. I would show up the same way, and I strive to maintain that so that any and everyone who experiences me. Like you might experience deeper or a more reflective conversation, or I might open up more depending on how well I know someone. But I I appreciate the fact that um, when people see me in one setting, it rings true to how I show up in other settings. And even in my flaws, you'll see me like try to work on those in every setting. Or or you can hear me name what I am working on from one setting to another setting. So that's something that I try. And the mark of insecurity, I think that goes back to what I was saying about um, like the cursing and stuff. Like I don't want to I don't want to have the 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 enough. I don't want to have like the insecurity and everything to the point where everything has to be proved. And I've tried to get to the place where I let some things go and allow people to just think what they want to think. It's very difficult to try and not prove, because like it matters to me. It matters to me that the truth is known, like whether good or bad about me. Like no, that's not it. This is it. But I try to understand that people will perceive me however they want to perceive me, and sometimes that has more to do with them than it does me. And then intense anger. This is one that I try to be aware of, because there's times where even though I'm not angry, how I speak and how I'm acting comes across as angry. And I think I've seen that with you boys where, I'm talking to correct something and you'll tell me, oh, and you're all angry. And I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm just da 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 da. And I realize, like, okay, I am definitely the product of my upbringing. And I have to be aware of, like, there's a level of intensity that comes with being overly direct. And if I don't address some of those things, then it can come across as me trying to offend or disrespect. And I don't like disrespect, so I don't want to carry things in a way where it can seem like I'm disrespecting someone else. So I don't know how good I am at it, but I strive to be better. To rather than be accusatory, I try to ask more questions. Like if it seems like I have offended someone, I try better to name and move forward from the offense. And I try to acknowledge hurt or judgment if I feel like someone might take something I've done as an offense, which means like sometimes I'm calling people and apologizing for something, and they're like, "Nah, it's all good," like that's not what I was thinking. But I don't, if I feel that I could have been perceived as wronging someone, I try to do something to address it or fix it. I don't know how good I do, but That's what I've been working on. Let me see. Dang, how much more? All right, you gotta hurry up. Your social life. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense either to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of the many, so that they may be saved. 1 Corinthians 10:31-33. Conduct yourselves with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person. Keep your behavior excellent among among the Gentiles, so that in the where is it? So that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God on the day of visitation. 1 Peter 2:12. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to be king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. And the praise of those who do right. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Verses 13-15. So social. Yeah, I try my best to have people in my life who feel consistent and real. Like if it's show up one way in one space and then show up differently in a different space, I have trouble with it, and I never know if that's a genuine thing or a struggle with being genuine. And I'm sure that rings true with me also. Like I don't want to be somewhere and they're like, oh wait, I saw you at the club, or like, oh yeah, you're the chaplain, you're the minister, you're whatever, you're a Christian. And like one of the most discouraging thing, not like damning things about myself, it was like somebody was talking and they were like, oh, he's a Christian. Oh, I didn't know, I thought he was just a regular dude. And that kind of hit me. It was like, wow, like, do I share my faith enough? Am I transparent enough? Or is there something in my behavior or the thoughts around me that comes across as someone who does not believe? Because the reality is, whatever we believe or whatever we hold true should have an impact on how we show up in this world. So, I think about that. All right, your church life. Only conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I will hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. Philippians 1:27. So then, let us pursue the things which make for peace and the building up of one another. Romans 14:19. Do nothing from selfish or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. But as for you, speak the things which are fitting for sound doctrine. All right, evaluate. From this study, man, I'm trying to find a good angle. It's really tough. From this study, isolate areas in your life where you need to improve. Translate those areas into goals, and then take action to reach those goals. For example, if you are a person who never gets to work on time, make it your goal to get an early start. Concentrate on this goal until you have developed a new habit. From this study, pray and ask God to help you achieve those goals. Realize, however, that prayer alone will not enable you to achieve goals. You must act as a responsible human being. As someone once said, we must put feet to our prayers. Oh, that's a good one. Remember, bad habits are hard to break, but we must break them if we are to become respectable and to be good reflection of the life of Jesus Christ. Thinking and growing together. The following questions are designed for group discussion after reading and studying the content of this chapter. What do you think about the conclusion that some men use bad language because they're insecure or angry? Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I think that's the case. It's easier to just jump to certain language and certain attitudes rather than address what's actually happening, where it's like your pride, ego was hit. You became more sensitive, but know that it's not something that people respond to, or your feelings are hurt, or whatever the case may be. What other reasons may cause men to resort to this kind of communication? I think it's something that a lot of people grow up with. They think it makes them fit in. It helps them to feel welcome. It's like, if I do the things that everyone around me does, then they'll see me as one of them, and I won't have to feel alone. That kind of thing. Which is, a dangerous thing for us, dangerous mindset for believers to have. And what can we do to become consistent Christians in all areas of our lives? If we have lost respect, how can we regain it? Man, I think the key word there is consistency. Like, I've done many things in my life that would cause me to lose respect of others. I've gotten into fights, I've stolen, I've been mean, I've been a bully, but the reality is I've just been insecure and selfish, and I've let myself be in positions where I wanted to be like the people around me more than I even desired God in any way, which caused me to become less of who I am. So, yeah. So for me, I strive to be consistent rather than hypocritical, because I know I can be a hypocrite. You know what I mean? Like most of us, we can do some things that go against who we believe ourselves to be. Well, I'll say for me, like, I can do things that would go against who I believe myself to be or who I strive to be. But I keep that mindset of, like, all right, I'm still striving. I'm not a perfect person. I wouldn't say I'm a great person, but I strive to be a good person and better than I've been previously. So that gives me capacity to be like, all right, I fail a lot, but I'm still trying to be good. I'm still trying to be better. So consistency helps. And also I try to make people close to me aware. It's like, yo, sometimes I have difficult moments or tough times. I think that's happened with you boys a few times where I'm like, all right, I'm trying to do this. I'm probably failing, but I'm trying to do such and such. And hopefully by naming that, you can see it. But that's all a part of. I don't want to lose your respect, even though there's probably times where you don't respect what I do or what I think or what I feel. So that's it. Set a goal. Write out one goal you'd like to achieve as a result of this study. All right. So that's another one where it's kind of tough. I have to sit there and think through that, but I think it is a key thing to seek consistency, seek honesty, transparency, and seek to continually grow to be a better individual. That's something that I'm thinking about, and I guess my goal would be to walk with the mindset, not so much of am I being an example, but rather like, am I living a life that is true to what I say I believe and is true to who I'm striving to be, and continue to lean on that. Oh man, my back is stiff from doing that PT test. My goodness. But yeah, that's the endeavor as far as I see it. Like, strive to live in a way where I can move consistently and not fall into the trap of flip-flopping and being phony, fake, or a different person depending on where I go and who I'm around and all that stuff. But all right, love y'all. Hope y'all have a great day. I pray you guys get the chances to do something with all this, and even beyond, we get a chance to talk about these chapters later on. Like, once all this part is done, I pray we get a chance to do more with it and maybe sit with some of these questions and try to answer some in real time when we're around one another. All right, love you. Talk to y'all later.